What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. If you're watching from Facebook, I did post a link on my timeline. So hopefully you join the stream. This is another 717 Sports Chat Live feature. And this time we are going to feature Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley, the big fight next week, the big boxing exhibition that everybody is clamoring to see and has been wanting to see for months now since this fight got made. Once again, this is 717 Sports Chat Live. I am your host, Marcus J. How's everybody doing tonight in the 717 and abroad? Turned out to be a beautiful evening. It was a little bit rough earlier. Like I said in my earlier cast when I was covering Pacquiao Yugas, it was a little bit rainy out, but turned out to be not so bad of a night. It's a nice little cool breeze out there. Might end up taking the dog out for a walk here after I do this stream. You know what I mean? Get him get his steps in. But 717 Sports Chat Live. Once again, I'm your host, Marcus J, and we are doing a 717 Sports Chat Live feature on Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. So, if you end up watching the stream, hit the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about this fight. I want to know your opinion. I'm going to give you guys my breakdown and opinion of how I think this fight is going to play out. Now, as we all know, not only is there a lot of money and bragging rights at stake in this fight, these two also came to an agreement on a ridiculous bet laid down by Jake Paul. The first bet apparently that he offered Tyron Woodley wouldn't accept. So it was a whole purse bet. Yeah, he told Tyron to bet his whole purse if he was that confident he would win. And Tyron was like, "Nah, bro, I'm trying to get this bag." So Jake came up with a new bet. So the winner apparently got to get a tattoo of, the loser got to get a tattoo of the winner's name on their body. My take on that is, if I was Tyron, I would have never took the bet. Honestly, I would have just said, "No, we don't need to bet. We got money on this fight. You know what I mean? We got bragging rights. That's enough of a bet as it is. You know what I mean? I don't need to play these childish type games. You know what I mean? Where we got to bet on this and we bet on that. Everything has to be a gamble. I'm already taking a gamble with my reputation by fighting you, etc." So with that being said, if I was Tyron, I wouldn't have took the bet, because now if you lose, obviously you got to walk around with I love Jake Paul on your body. And to Jake Paul, I don't think he personally cares. I think he would just get an I Heart Tyron Woodley tattoo on his body just for the fuck of it, quite honestly. That's just my opinion on that. I don't think the whole bet situation really affects Jake that much. He's the one who laid down the bet. He was willing to lay down the bet, knowing that he could lose this fight, knowing that Tyron is a seasoned veteran in the fight game, even though he comes from MMA and boxing, obviously is somewhat of a different world compared to Jake's level. In all honesty, Tyron Woodley to me is even on a way better boxing level than what Jake Paul is, and I think we're gonna find that out next Sunday night. But that's my opinion on it. So, the bet, I think it would, but in all honesty, it was a stupid bet to accept for Tyron. And in so many ways, it kind of is playing to Jake's mental, in his mind games. You know what I mean? That kind of worked to Jake's advantage, because now if you're Tyron Woodley, you got to sit there and really think, "Oh, I got to beat this dude. I got to really beat this dude. Otherwise, I got to get this tattoo on my fucking body." So I think by Tyron accepting that bet, that he put more pressure on himself than he needed to. But with that being said, to a degree, I kind of think Tyron wanted to put that pressure when he sat there for a split second and said, "Okay, I'll take the bet." I think personally he in that split second, in that moment of thinking about it, I think he said, "You know what? This is going to be extra motivation. This is going to be extra fuel, because ain't no damn way I want to get this punk's, tattoo on my, I Heart Jake Paul tattooed on my body." So I think Tyron, if anything, is going to use that as more extra motivation and fuel to the fire to get this victory. So that's my opinion on the whole bet situation. Though I'll give Jake the win on that one, because from a mental aspect, I think that's a win for Jake, because, like I said, Jake doesn't care if he has to get that tattoo of Tyron Woodley's name on his body. I personally don't think he gives a damn. Tyron Woodley, I think he cares. You know what I mean? So Obviously, that puts more pressure on Tyron to get the job done, and I think that works in Jake's favor to a degree. So we're going to move along. How does Jake Paul win this fight? Okay. Before I get to that, swig. All right. How does Jake Paul win this fight? Well, Jake Paul, as we know, the level of opposition for Jake Paul has been bare. The cover has been a little bit bare. A lot to be desired. Jake Paul, from what I've seen in his fights, from what I've watched, he's got good power. I will give him that. He can crack. He can hit some. He hits hard. I'll give him that. But he's basic 1-2. Jab, straight right hand. I don't see anything else really fancy with his attack. He's a big guy, and he's tall, so he's going to, he uses that reach. Most of his opponents he's fought, he's the bigger guy. So he's using his reach to his advantage, as he should. So with that being said, he does somewhat have a reach advantage. He is naturally the bigger guy against Tyron. As we know, Tyron competed at welterweight, which is 170-ish. So Tyron walks around probably like 185, 190-ish. Jake is usually walking around at probably like 215-ish. And this fight is being contested at cruiserweight at 190, at the 190 limit. So how does Jake Paul win this fight? Well, obviously, he just has to keep that belief. In all honesty, it's not even, I want to say about skill, because to me, Jake lacks a certain lack of true boxing skill. He has the fundamental down, the jab, the right hand. He has that down. But I have not seen anything else that really would jump off as, ooh, this is something he might be able to do against Tyron, or this type of shot, might work. Other than maybe he's good off the back foot. I will give him that too. He is good off throwing punches off the back foot. He can throw punches falling away. He did prove that. Even though it was against Nate Robinson, he still possessed that. He showed that he possesses that trait, that he can hit somebody coming off of his back foot and being on the retreat. So that is something that Tyron is going to have to keep note of. That when he comes in trying to, obviously put the pressure on Jake, Jake can fight off his back foot pretty decently. I will give him that. But I guess for Jake, it's just the belief. It's not even about punching. It's not even about the punches, landing, whatever. Keep that belief. In all honesty, this guy genuinely believes that he's a fighter. And that's what's got him to this point. I mean, give credit where credit is due, man. The kid, he's rightfully picking his way through the ranks. He's really legitimately trying to be a boxer, like a real fighter. And in all honesty, he made a valid point at a press conference not long ago. You guys talk about my level opposition, but what do real boxers do when they get into the pros? They don't fight killers automatically, unless you're like Vasily Lomachenko, who did, because he had such a long extensive amateur background. Vasily Lomachenko did. That's why he just jumped into the fire of fighting the top guys at his division once he turned pro. But 99% of the time, Vasily Lomachenko literally probably being that 1%. Literally, most of these guys built their resume on bad fighters. That's true. Most of these boxers built their way up through bad fighters. Deontay Wilder did it. All of them mostly did it. You look at some of these guys' early years, some of these even great fighters. Look at Julio Cesar Chavez. Prime example. How many bum fighters, how many cab drivers, as they used to call them, did Julio Cesar Chavez fight back in the day before he fought a legitimate opponent that somebody said, okay, that's a threat to this guy? What was it, like 45, 50 fights? So Jake, to that degree, I have to give him his credit. He's doing this the right way. If he wants to be a real boxer, he's slowly stepping up his level of opposition one fight at a time. Because also what that benefits him is the experience over time to learn and hone new crafts in boxing. So by fighting a YouTuber first, by fighting a basketball player second, then by stepping up and fighting Ben Askren, who's a retired MMA guy who hadn't been active in over like 2 years, who was coming off a hip replacement, but each and every time you're stepping up your level of opposition. But easily, this is the stiffest level of competition that he is stepping up against. And the main reason is that Tyron is active. He even though he was coming off a 4-fight losing streak in the UFC, the point is he's still active. He's not coming off a bad hip. He's still active. And now he doesn't have to worry about multiple disciplines like in this fight like he would in MMA. All he has to worry about doing is the art of punching and the art of boxing. The art of setting traps with your feet, setting traps with your feints, just with your hands as well. You don't have to worry about kicks coming back. You don't have to worry about being taken down. You don't have to worry about being submitted. None of that. So how does Jake win? Keep that belief. He has to keep the belief that this belief that he's a legitimate boxer and that he can beat whoever he's lining, slowly stacking these guys up. He has to keep that belief. If he keeps that belief, that's how he's going to win. And that's the truth. If he keeps that belief and uses what he's learned in these 4 years of boxing to his advantage, he can win this fight. Because though Tyron has tons of experience in MMA and fighting in general, boxing is a different world. And you've seen it when Conor McGregor went to fight Floyd Mayweather. It's a different world. It is an entirely different animal. The punching technique in MMA is so different than the punching technique in boxing. So Jake, in order to win this fight, has to do what he's been doing. Keep that belief. Don't give a fuck what anybody else says. I don't care if you believe I'm a boxer, Marcus. I don't care if you believe I'm a boxer, Jerry. I don't care if you believe I'm a boxer, Tyron. I don't care if anybody believes I'm a real boxer. I believe I'm a real boxer. That's what's got me to this point, and that's what's going to keep carrying me through these fights. That's what he has to do. Keep the belief up. That's how Jake Paul can win this fight. And we're going to move on here to how does Tyron Woodley win this fight. But before we do that, I'm going to take a short break. All right, and we are back. Once again, this is 717 Sports Chat Live featuring the Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley fight. As I just spoke about a few minutes ago, I talked about how Jake Paul can win this fight. Now we're going to move on to how can Tyron Woodley win this fight. How Tyron Woodley can win this fight against Jake Paul is really quite simple. Use your years of fighting experience. In all honesty, use your fighting experience because Jake has never fought somebody with this level of skill, especially on a stand-up. Yes, everybody knows Tyron, he can wrestle, etc., etc. But Tyron's got hands, man, and he's got real legitimate knockout power. That's how he won the UFC welterweight title, by knocking out Robbie Lawler with a big bomb over right hand. Now, granted, it was kind of a wild haymaker, but I think the years of experience and fight IQ, being able to pick up on the subtle little movements, the footwork, etc., etc. I think just the overall years of fight experience that Tyron has coming into this fight is going to play all the big difference. I think that personally, like just that years of experience fighting, ring generalship. Yes, I mean he fought in a cage in an octagon, but you have to think he's also trained in a boxing ring too. He's done that before. You know, he's probably even fought in his early years in a boxing ring. You know what I mean, etc. Sparred, whatever. So, ring generalship, knowing where to be at the right place at the right time. Just that overall, like I said, fight IQ, knowing how to place a certain punch, knowing how to throw certain combinations. He holds that over Jake because of all of his years of experience in overall MMA and fighting. Yes, like I said, boxing, outright boxing is a completely different animal than mixed martial arts. But the fact that Tyron has some experience boxing, being that he's an MMA fighter, because yes, do they implement MMA striking with the hands? Yes, but they also implement real boxing as well. So he has already some level of knowledge of how boxing works. Now it's just all about getting his body in the right condition to be able to perform as a boxer. That's the biggest thing for me. That's the biggest thing for me is the pace. That's the biggest thing. As how will Tyron's endurance look? Because if this goes a little bit later, we'll say what 3 minute rounds, and what I want to say is this a 12-round fight? You know what? Let's see. This up. So I thought 8 rounds. Okay, I wanted to be precise, but this is an 8-round fight. I mean, so 3 8-minute rounds. So in all honesty, it's not really at a disadvantage for Tyron because he's used to fighting for 25 minutes. If we have three, if we have 3 8-minute rounds, it's 24 minutes. So to a degree, that kind of favors Tyron in terms of endurance because it's not like he has to go those extra 4 rounds or 2 rounds as it is in some boxing fights. Some boxing fights are 10 rounds, but championship boxing fights are 12 rounds. So with that being said, I mean, now I think about it now in terms of endurance, I guess I really shouldn't really be worried about endurance when it comes to Tyron Woodley in this fight. But overall, Tyron, just use your fight IQ, man. Use your fight IQ. In all honesty, that's all you have to do. This kid's never fought in the trenches. You have. He's never been touched. You have the ability to touch him based on your activity. Ben even touched him. Ben came off a 2-year layoff and caught him with a couple clean right hands. Just Ben just wasn't in shape to take the fire back and to really do anything else. That's the difference. Tyron is in shape. And he's taking it seriously. He's taking it seriously because he wants to continue boxing. So to a degree, he's using Jake Paul as a platform, as a stepping stone to launch his own boxing career. So with that being said, I'm going Tyron Woodley's fight IQ is what's going to carry him into a victory in this fight. It's just the overall fight IQ. The trenches. This guy has never been in the trenches, Jake Paul. Tyron Woodley has. That's how Tyron Woodley wins this fight. Use that fight IQ. Use that trenches mentality. In the trenches mentality. I've been here before. That's how Tyron Woodley wins this fight. Overall fight IQ. Overall fight IQ and put Jake on the back foot, but be careful putting Jake on the back foot because I did say Jake is pretty decent fighting off the back foot. But I do think that once Tyron hits Jake, Jake said the same thing about Tyron, that, oh, once I hit him, he's going to realize it's a real fight. Well, I think the same thing for Jake Paul. I think once Tyron hits him cleanly, he's going to notice it's a real fighter he's fighting. And then we're going to see how Jake Paul really responds to that. But that's how Tyron Woodley wins this fight, is by overall fight IQ, the big stage he's been here before. Not getting flustered. There won't be no nerves or butterflies, I don't believe. I think the only thing he's going to be nervous about is if he loses, he's got to get that damn tattoo. That's it. But that's how Tyron Woodley wins this fight. All right. Now I'm going to give you my who wins and why. I'm going to go with Tyron Woodley in this fight. And it just dates back to what I just said a few minutes ago. Fighting in the trenches. Fighting in the trenches, the overall fight IQ, the overall experience, fighting so many different type of fighters, wrestlers, strikers, Brazilian jiu-jitsu masters, etc. You name it. Submission specialists. He's fought any style of fighter that you could possibly want to face, Tyron Woodley. And that's why he is going to win this fight. On top of that, he's in shape, and he was still recently active. He's not coming off of a layoff or a retirement with a bad hit. He's not a fellow YouTuber. He's not a retired basketball player. He's a seasoned, well-oiled fighting machine. And he's still active. That's the biggest thing for me, is because he still was recently active. Had he not been active, I'd say if he was out for like the same amount of time as Ben, or even a year and a half, then I'd say, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, just because he's going to have to knock off some rust. But being that he was, recently active in the UFC and just got cut not too long ago, I'm going with Tyron Woodley based on fight IQ, fighting in the trenches. Jake Paul never had to fight so far in his 3-fight boxing career. He's barely even gotten touched. Tyron Woodley has beat up guys. Tyron Woodley has gotten beat up. He's been through it all in the fight game, all the emotions, etc. And that, to me, is what's going to be the downfall of Jake Paul. This kid doesn't know how to lose just yet. Why? Because every opponent has been thoroughly, properly handpicked. But I think this time he made the wrong choice. I think him and his team did the wrong thing by mouthing off to Tyron Woodley in that leading up to that Askren fight when they were in the back room, when they was doing the hand wraps and all that. I think they made a grave mistake. Sometimes it's like what Jorge Masvidal said when after he knocked out Ben Askren. There's some bad motherfuckers out there, man. Sometimes you just don't want to wake them up. Same rules apply for Tyron Woodley. Think about it. The man is being kicked while he's down. Oh, you're on a 4-fight losing streak. You're washed. You're 39 years old. This and this and this and this and that. Sometimes you don't wake a sleeping giant. A sleeping giant will step on you. That sleeping giant will not only step on you, he'll take your money, your pride, and your bravado. And he will humble you, young man. And he will humble you and show you why you don't play around when it comes to this, oh, I'm a real fighter thing. That's why I'm picking Tyron Woodley to win this fight. I'm not being biased. It's not because I have a personal vendetta against Jake Paul. In all honesty, I'll go on record saying this. I've actually grown new respect for Jake Paul watching the episode 1 of the All Access piece. I watched it earlier. I have new respect for Jake Paul, because if there's one thing he is serious about, and I can see him staying in boxing. Let's say if Jake Paul were to lose this fight, right, and says, all right, you know what? I realize his levels. I'm not going to continue. Or let's say if he does continue, but he loses again to whoever he fights next, whatever. I can still see him having a role in boxing, because he did open a boxing club for kids, and it's called Boxing Bullies. I respect that. I respect that a lot. You got to get these kids off, off the streets and back in the gyms. I respect that wholeheartedly. Me seeing that made me have a new level of respect for him, especially in terms of him taking boxing serious. Now I can honestly say that, okay, I do believe he's taking boxing seriously. Do I think that's going to help him beat Tyron? No, I don't. But I do think that this guy does have at least some respect for boxing. I didn't think he had it before, but by doing that and by putting the youth and investing in the youth, I'm a big advocate for that. Investing in our youth, getting our youth out of the streets, out of their cell phones, and back in the fucking gym and back in sports and doing something constructive with their time. So I will give that to Jake Paul. Shout out to Jake Paul for that, in all honesty. But do I think that's going to help him win this fight? No, I do not. I don't think. I just think that Tyron's overall fight IQ, being in the trenches. I'm not saying Jake Paul, personal wise, has never had any rough times or had to dig himself personally out of some trenches. I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about fighting. So far, he has 3 fights. In each of those 3 fights, I can't even think of one time where I think what he got hit the most was against Ben Askren, and that was 2 right hands. So in terms of fighting in the trenches, I got to go with Tyron Woodley. And also just on the personal vendetta, like I said, this is not for shits and giggles. Tyron really wants to hurt this kid. He does. And I just personally think that could spell trouble for Jake Paul because you're not used to somebody coming at you with experience who knows how to fight. Not saying Ben Askren per se didn't know how to fight, but would stand up? No, he didn't. Ben Askren was never a stand-up fighter. Ben Askren was a guy who put his guard up, would take your best shots, and if he can grab a hold of a wrist or grab a hold of a leg, in his best days, you were done. He'd get you down on the ground, and then he'd beat you up or submit you. But in terms of boxing or standing up, Jake Paul, like Ben Askren, was never that guy. This is the toughest challenge that Jake Paul, obviously, everybody knows this. This is his toughest challenge to date. Toughest challenge to date. And I just think that Tyron's overall fight IQ will be the reason why he wins this fight. And will take this young man's bravado. He's going to take his money, and he's going to take his pride from him. I genuinely believe that. Because this guy, it was interesting to me. It was interesting to me that he created the boxing bullies because he said, he's been bullied and stuff like that. And he's admitted to bullying people. Well, that's the thing. You still kind of bully people, bro. So in a sense, you're still kind of two-wayed with that. You're kind of hypocritical. But I think he's going to be the one to get physically bullied on Sunday night. That's just my take on who wins and why. I just genuinely believe that the fight IQ of Tyron Woodley is going to be all the difference to why Jake Paul loses his fight and why Tyron Woodley wins. And like I said, the experience of being able to stand up and throw punches and throw strikes. This is easily the best striker, boxer, whatever you want to call Tyron Woodley or whatever. This is the best puncher that Jake has faced so far. And being that he's active, even though he's coming off losses, now, like I said, he only has to worry about one discipline only, and that's boxing. And when you have that overall fight IQ, and when you have that muscle memory, that twitch, when you have that twitch still, and he still does, learning overall boxing, like boxing outright from MMA, isn't really that difficult. It really isn't. It's really not, especially when you're dedicated to fighting. Tyron Woodley is dedicated to fighting. There's nobody that can doubt that. Nobody that can doubt that. Tyron Woodley is a dedicated to the fight game. There's a reason why he's a legend. There's a reason why he's an MMA future UFC Hall of Famer. There's a reason he's accomplished so much. There's levels. Jake Paul has never been to the level that Tyron Woodley has been. Jake Paul has never been to the lows, to the lower levels that Tyron Woodley has been. And I think that next Sunday night is going to be a very, very humbling experience for one Jake Paul. But that's what I think, how I think the fight's going to play out. And I'm going to give my prediction. I think Tyron's going to knock him out within 3 rounds. I don't see it going past 3 rounds. I want to say 2 rounds, but I'm going to be safe with my bet and say 3 rounds. I think the first round is going to be a little bit more of a feeling out process for both men. And then the second round is going to start to heat up. And then once Tyron gets in the rhythm, he's going to get him out of there. That's my prediction. Tyron Woodley knocks out Jake Paul round 3. But that's my prediction. And that's my opinion on my opinions on how this fight is going to break down between how Jake can win and how Tyron can win and who wins and why. I want to know your predictions for this fight. Anybody who watches this video out there, I want to know who you guys have winning this fight. Was Jake Paul going to win this fight, or is Tyron Woodley going to win this fight? And will it be by decision, or will it be by knockout? And if it's by knockout, what round do you guys have either men winning in? Which round do you guys have either of these fighters winning in if it's a knockout? Hit the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. I want to know your predictions for this fight. And tell me how you think the fight is going to break down. Like I said, I'm going with Tyron. I just think the overall fight IQ, guys, I do. The overall fight IQ. Just being in battles, being in those wars. And now that he doesn't have to worry about multiple disciplines, he just has to worry about one discipline and focus on one thing. And it's worth to note as well, he's been getting trained by the best. Floyd Mayweather's been in his camp training with him, teaching him the little twitch nuances, the little maneuvers, how to slide off a punch, how to shoulder roll this, how to step over to this angle and throw a punch, etc., etc. So I just think with that experience in his corner and his overall fight IQ, Tyron Woodley is going to win this fight by knockout in the 3rd round. But I want to know your prediction. Who wins this fight, how, and why? Jake Paul by decision, Jake Paul by knockout. And if you're going Jake Paul by knockout, what round? Same goes for Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley by decision or Tyron Woodley by knockout? And if Tyron wins by knockout, what round? Hit the comment section. I want to know what you guys think. But all right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here for tonight. This was another 717 Sports Chat live feature. Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. I will be doing live commentary for that fight. So I will be making a premiere about it ahead of time, putting it out there as a broadcast. I'll get it scheduled. So hopefully we can get as many viewers as possible. Unfortunately, as we know, I can't stream the fight itself. It's a copyright issue, but I will be doing live commentary on the fight. So I hope to see y'all there. This is another 717 Sports Chat live feature. I'm your host, Marcus J., and I'm out for the night, guys. Have a blessed evening in the 717 and abroad.